The autonomic nervous system is a division of the peripheral nervous system that basically is not under voluntary control. You don't have to tell these things to happen, they just sort of happen automatically, right? And so remember that there are two divisions of the autonomic nervous system. There is what we refer to as the sympathetic division, which is often referred to as the fight or flight division. And then you have the parasympathetic division. And the parasympathetic division is often referred to as your rest and digest division, right? So two divisions. Now, what the autonomic nervous system has that's different from sort of the motor system, the skeletal muscle system, is that the autonomic nervous system uses a two neuron chain. So both of them use a two neuron chain. Right? So what that means is that you have a neuron that exits the central nervous system, then it synapses with a secondary neuron, right? And so this region where it synapses, that's going to be a collection of synapses or cell bodies outside of the central nervous system, right? So what do we call a collection of cell bodies outside of the nervous system? Call those ganglia. So there's going to be sympathetic ganglia and there's going to be parasympathetic ganglia. Right? So remember that when you looked at the anatomy of the nervous system, right, you had sort of the spinal cord, and I'm just going to draw the vertebrae here, right? And you had neurons that came out of the spinal cord, right? And then you had this trunk that ran like this. Right? And everybody remembers, hopefully, that this was called the sympathetic trunk. Okay? So notice that the ganglia, right, because that's what these are here, those ganglia are very close to the central nervous system. Now, in the parasympathetic division, those ganglia are close to the target organs, right? So that's what I'm going to put. Put ganglia close to CNS, or the central nervous system. Then over here, we're going to put ganglia close to targets. Okay, so two different, or one difference there between where the ganglia are located. Now, where do these sort of neurons originate in the sympathetic division and parasympathetic division? If we look at our sympathetic division, this is said to have a thoracolumbar or thoracic and lumbar origin. So these neurons for the sympathetic division, right, occur in the thoracic and lumbar division. For our parasympathetic division, this is the brainstem, remember our pons, right, brainstem, and then the sacral regions. Okay, so you have the thoracic and lumbar for sympathetic, you have brainstem and sacral regions for our parasympathetic. All right, now, because of this, remember that there's a two neuron chain, okay? So I'm going to draw purple here, right? So we're going to start with neuron 1, and it's going to synapse with neuron 2. I'll draw this in blue. Okay. So this synapse here, remember that occurs at those ganglia. So if we draw neuron 1 and 2 in our sympathetic or parasympathetic division, right, what do you think is going to be different? Right? So that ganglia is going to be further away from that central nervous system, right? And closer to the target organ. So notice that what we drew here is that we have what we refer to as our preganglionic fiber. Right? And then we have what we refer to as our postganglionic fiber. Okay. So notice that in the sympathetic division, right, we had a short preganglionic fiber. and we had a long postganglionic. Over here in our parasympathetic, notice that it's backwards, right? Or the opposite. We had a long preganglionic, and then we had a short postganglionic. Okay? Now, with these, there are a couple different neurotransmitters that we're going to talk about, right? There is what we refer to as ACH, which is acetylcholine. Okay? And then we will talk about norepinephrine, which is abbreviated in E, norepinephrine. Okay, now if we look at this system here, right, there are, remember, if there's a neurotransmitter, right, there has to be a receptor for that neurotransmitter. So when we look at these neurotransmitters, right, we can have a cholinergic receptor. So what do you think cholinergic receptor binds to? It binds to acetylcholine, right? So that's a cholinergic receptor. Now there's two types of cholinergic receptors that we talk about. Something we refer to as nicotinic, call it nicotinic because nicotine can also bind to it. And then there is something called muscarinic. And muscarinic receptors, sort of a fungus, can bind to them, okay? And then if it is a binds to norepinephrine, we refer to that as an adrenergic receptor. Okay, and there's a couple different types of adrenergic receptors, but we refer to them mainly as alpha and beta. Okay, so if we look at this two neuron chain, right, we have our preganglionic fiber, okay, and it is going to release acetylcholine, okay, and this, our postganglionic fiber, is going to have a nicotinic receptor, okay, a nicotinic receptor, right? So we say that the preganglionic fiber is a cholinergic fiber, and the postganglionic fiber has cholinergic receptors. Okay, so over here in our parasympathetic division, we have our preganglionic fiber, and it is going to release acetylcholine. And then we have our postganglionic fiber, and it is going to have nicotinic receptors. So both of them, right, in both systems, parasympathetic and sympathetic, cholinergic preganglionic fiber, nicotinic receptors on the postganglionic fiber. Now, we have down here, we have our target tissue. Okay, same thing over here, our target. Okay, so these are going to have, the sympathetic division, these are going to have adrenergic receptors. Adrenergic receptors, right? So they're going to either have a beta alpha receptor or a beta receptor. Over here, they are going to have cholinergic muscarinic receptors. Muscarinic. Okay, so we have adrenergic receptors at the target tissues of our sympathetic division. We have muscarinic receptors at the target tissue of the parasympathetic division. Okay, so go ahead and make sure that you understand this, because in the next video we'll talk about all of the different receptor types in the different regions of the body.